The 2-decade period between the wars was known for three major factors. The influenza pandemic of 1918, which killed as many people as the war in a much shorter time period, the Roaring Twenties, and the Great Depression. In Germany, it was the rise of Adolf Hitler and Nazism, the message of hate, especially of the Jews. At the same time as Hitler was the rise of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal in America. Early in 1918, Wilson wanted 14 points, calling for a League of Nations, then led the American delegation to the Paris Peace Conference. Wilson got sick, perhaps from the influenza pandemic called the Spanish flu. He stressed the League of Nations as part of the Versailles Treaty, which included collective security against external aggression. Ironically, Congress refused to pass the treaty in the U.S. Trained as a geologist, Hoover took charge of the relief effort to some 400,000 Americans stuck in continental Europe during World War I, especially in Belgium, then expanded distribution efforts to millions of tons of food relief to the Belgian people, later northern France, and was pegged a food czar. After the war ended, the food crisis continued and he expanded efforts even to Germany and the Soviets. He became Secretary of Commerce from 1921 to 28. Republicans won the presidency under Warren Harding in 1920, pledging a return to normalcy. Harding was corrupt. Teapot Dome was the major scandal, and he died in office to be replaced by a taciturn Calvin Coolidge. It was considered a decade of economic prosperity. Autos, airlines, movies, and radio, a rising stock market fueled by speculation, the Jazz Age, the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote, but included prohibition, rising organized crime, stagnating farming, and rising bank failures. The stock market crashed in October 1929, continued down as the economy collapsed. Unemployment hit 25% by 1933. Farms were foreclosed, and the federal government proved feckless. Former food hero President Herbert Hoover did nothing to relieve the suffering as the now homeless built makeshift Hoovervilles. Hoover was easily defeated in the 1932 election by Democrat Franklin Roosevelt, who promised a New Deal, then declared a bank holiday to rebuild confidence in American finance, and passed additional massive legislation in the first 100 days. Soup kitchens offered simple, hot meals, including soup or stew, bread, and possibly coffee and donuts. Food banks often provided free or cheap food, with the soup kitchens run by volunteers. In this time of desperation, this may have been the only food for many of the unemployed and dispossessed. They were operated by churches, charities, and other private organizations at a time when the federal government failed to provide adequate relief. The most interesting case was Al Capone getting involved. Related community-based efforts included expanding food banks, bread lines, welfare cafeterias, and penny restaurants. Agriculture had been prosperous during the war years, then a downturn when the war ended, eventually followed by the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. After the war, food prices dropped as food surpluses grew. Farmers had debts from the war years and struggled to repay those loans. The Federal Farm Bank was established to provide long-term credit, Then the federal intermediate credit for short-term loans. The government attempted to limit crop production and purchase supplies. Government programs failed to provide relief during the early Dust Bowl period. Drought and massive dust storms hit the Great Plains in the 1930s, made worse by poor farming practices. Crop failures, farm foreclosures, and displaced families were the results. Many migrated to seek a better life, described by John Steinbeck's novel The Grapes of Wrath. The positive outcomes was the research and development during the New Deal, which improved farming practices and conservation techniques. FDR's New Deal included farming, and the early legislation was the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933, set up to boost food prices by reducing surpluses and giving subsidies to farmers. That did increase crop prices but benefited large farms and hurt sharecroppers. This was partially corrected by the Farm Security Administration, which included loans and training. The Federal Emergency Relief Administration provided relief efforts through states, including soup kitchens and direct aid to the poor. Other organizations increased employment, like the Civilian Conservation Corps and Work Progress Administration. The period of 1918 through 1939 in Europe included political and economic turmoil, including extreme inflation, depression, hunger, political instability, and the rise of extreme ideologies. Next time on Food History and Mystery.